It's the Fellowship of the Geek Show, a weekly podcast about comics, the comic book industry, and other geek pop culture. Music courtesy of Manny the Martyr. And now, on with the show!
Hey there, everybody. It's the Fellowship of the Geeks podcast. My name is Thomas Chick, and joining me for this episode is Mike Marlowe.
Hey, gang.
Les Webster.
Hello, all.
And Liz Newman.
Hello, everybody.
How are you guys doing?
Pretty good.
Lovely.
Yeah, well, let's go with that.
I hope everybody's doing okay out there. So what's been going on in your corner of the galaxy?
Trying to think what I did, but I don't think I really did anything.
The last time she said this, we went on for an hour. But anyway.
Right.
Yeah, I can't even think of anything newsworthy that's happened in the last week. So, yeah. Surprise! I don't have anything.
What?
I don't know what's happening here.
What you guys got, and I'll feed off you.
I don't know how to react.
Easy to follow up.
Cats and dogs living together. Mass hysteria.
Wow. Yeah, something will come out. And she'll...
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I'll think of something and go, oh, yeah.
And then an hour later.
Mm-hmm.
Right. No, I think I got it out last week with the whole Substack and sticking my foot in my mouth. That kind of thing. So I'm still tasting toes, so I think I'm good.
Shocking.
Right. I will just say, if I upset anyone over what I said, I do apologize, because I guess dealing with anxiety is like I do when you talk to someone or we record for about 3 days later, I'll be like, oh, maybe I shouldn't have said that, or maybe I shouldn't have said that. And I kept going back to the creator thing, and it didn't quite come out the way I wanted it to, so.
If anybody who's listened to this podcast for a period of time knows that you support creators, so don't worry about it.
And I think I came off, very anti-creator, and I wasn't saying that. I was just saying that be smart, get it in writing, cover all your bases, So.
Right. And I mean, the hard part of that is that there's not really any structure for helping people do that when they're first breaking into the industry. There's almost nothing available to help for anybody to even know that sort of thing. So it's rough.
To break into the industry, sad to say, most of them take what they get.
Mm-hmm.
They want that break so bad.
Absolutely.
So, but they said it just didn't come out the way I meant to. So.
It's all good.
Yep. Hey, filled an hour, right? So that's all.
Yeah, it did. All that backpedaling and wait.
All that content you were wanting, Mikey. You got it.
We got a whole bunch of content last week. Well, gosh, I guess it's my turn then, which, sadly enough, I don't really have that much more than Liz does. And most of what I'm doing right now is either planning or watching stuff for stuff we're not really ready to talk about yet. So,
Secret.
It's hardly a secret. It's not like we haven't babbled about it constantly for a while now. But, yeah, I'm about halfway through our October stuff. I'm far enough ahead that I'm actually thinking I'm going to slow down a bit because I don't want to I don't want to get it all in my head now and then forget about it because we haven't talked about it for a month. But because my brain is funny that way.
Right.
But yeah, so there will be some good stuff in there, and there will be some fun conversations too.
Uh-huh.
Mm-hmm. Plans within plans.
Mm-hmm.
We're gonna have a busy October.
Oh God, yes.
A fun one,
Very fun.
but busy. Yep.
Very busy. Well, it's fun because we drop on Sundays. So this year October has 5 Sundays,
Ooh.
which is why we're going to have 6 horror month episodes because the 5 Sundays and all the horror. And sneak preview, we may end up having an extra bonus episode also. So we might end up dropping 7 episodes in October. That would be unprecedented.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Don't think we've ever dropped more than 5 in a month. But anyway, that's all background stuff that nobody cares about. So hey, shows you where my mind space has been. Yeah.
How about you, Les?
Well, it does seem that I need to rework my contract because I was not really planning on all of those episodes.
Too late. Too late.
Wait. We have contracts? What is this? When did this start?
Yeah.
I'm
Les is
sorry.
getting paid. Excuse me.
He didn't say anything
Sorry,
about paycheck. He just said contract.
This is
Like,
my
shush, don't tell her.
Bob Kane coming out, so
Ouch.
for me, I follow in the previous comments. I didn't do much to make myself smarter. Go figure. So
Record late last week? Is that what? Did we?
What now?
Did we record late last week?
yes,
Okay.
Yes and no. Sort of, kind of.
Sure. Okay.
And then we tried to do, last week was very complicated.
Yeah.
That's part of the deal is we ended up spending half of our evenings last week either recording or not recording. But
Yeah.
yeah, which is why last week's episode was a little different.
so I tell the listeners to get a scorecard. You can't tell a player without a scorecard.
Is that why you sent us these shirts with numbers on them that we're supposed to wear while we're recording? Is that what that's for?
Yeah, we'll go with that.
I think that's the number we are on his list.
And why on mine did the sleeves tie up in the back? I don't understand.
That's for precautions.
Okay.
So you can scratch your back, you know.
Uh-huh. Absolutely. We're not going to talk about what the ball gag is for, but anyway.
I didn't request ball gags.
Oh, okay. Oh, good.
You must have been a favorite of somebody.
Right? Go Mikey.
Oh, Jesus.
I just get canned bread.
I can't even follow that.
So that's it, Les?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's all up to you, man. Save us.
Shh. Save us. No. Yeah, I mean, I've been doing a little homework for October as well. Not much else going on. Just kind of just trying to mosey on down the road, you know. I know, very exciting. Sorry, and so, oh well.
Hey, you almost segued us into a song from The Wiz there, so you know.
He's on down the road. Yep.
That's what I was thinking. And I thought, God, don't do it. Don't do it.
He's on.
Hey.
He's on down the road.
With who we're about to have on, it makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
Oh, damn, that's good. I didn't even think of that. I did not even make that connection. Seriously. I wish I wish I had.
Liz.
I wish I had, but yeah, good one.
Before we get into this week's discussion, this week's episode, do want to point out that we do have a Discord. Feel free to jump on in. We usually post news items, trailers, memes, and stuff for topic discussion, that kind of thing.
All kinds of crazy shit.
All crazy stuff, yes. It is free. Discord, the sign up is free. The app is free. If you go to our website, www.thefellowshipwiththegeeks.net, right there on the homepage, there's an invite. You just click on that image, and you'll get invited into our Discord, and hope you have fun. It's been a blast. We've had it up for a little over a year now, and it's been fun.
Even if we just torture each other most of the time, it's still fun.
Yeah, and when you do, just drop Liz a note and say chicken salad.
That was cold.
She almost passed a cheese sandwich through her
Yeah,
nose.
I think so.
That probably wouldn't even have qualified as a miracle, huh?
Okay, for this week, longtime listeners know we've had this gentleman on a few times, and it's always fun when he comes on. It's David Pepose, who's a multi-Ringo nominated writer. You may be familiar with his work, Scout's Honor, which is actually being put out in trade the 1st of September, if I'm not mistaken. Going to the Chapel, and one of our favorites, Spencer Locke, who's already had 2 volumes. I believe 3rd volume is supposed to be coming out here in the not too distant future. But he is with us to talk about his new Kickstarter, the 2nd issue of The OZ, which is already doing phenomenally well. Was already doing phenomenally well when we had him on, but just continues to do real well, and we're really happy with him. We're happy for him. With all that said, here is our interview with David. Congratulations. Great first day.
Thank you. I'm so blown away just by seeing the kind of response that the OZ has gotten, and to see that people really, they seem to really enjoy the book. They seem to be coming back in pretty significant numbers. I was just actually comparing our first day this year to our first day last year, and we're actually right on course, matching with what we did in our first day last year. The big difference being is that Scott Snyder's not running a Kickstarter campaign to bring in a bunch of new names. So I feel really good. I feel like that shows that we've got some legs. and some longevity, and that's even in the face of things like increased international shipping, which that was sort of a big pitfall that we had last go around, was not adequately budgeting for what the international shipping was going to be. But yeah, just seeing how enthusiastic everyone's been about our book, it's really encouraging to me as a creator.
Now, for those who are not familiar with the OZ, why don't you give a little description about the story?
Sure. The OZ is like, what if the Hurt Locker took place in The Wizard of Oz? It's the story of Dorothy Gale's granddaughter, who's a disillusioned Iraq war veteran who finds herself stranded in the war-torn land of Oz. She discovers that when her grandmother killed 2 wicked witches, convinced the Wizard of Oz to leave, and then clicked her heels together and split, it caused a power vacuum that led to decades of brutal civil war. And so now this new Dorothy is going to have to reunite her grandmother's former friends, the Tin Soldier, the Courageous Lion, and the Scarecrow, as she hopes to survive the horrors of the occupied zone, or as the locals call it, the OZ. So, if you're a fan of books like Mad Max, or movies like Mad Max, the Fallout series, the Old Guard, Fables, DMZ, you're going to find a lot to love about the OZ, and especially if you're a fan of L. Frank Baum's Wizard of Oz mythology, or the Judy Garland film, you'll really, I think, dig what we're doing here.
Well, I picked it up because I'm a friend of the Judy Garland Oz. It's always been one of my favorites.
Yeah.
So I like it's an Oz story, but it's not an Oz story. It's different, and I love that.
Yeah,
I love the play on it.
Thank you. I always gravitate towards things that have imagery. All of my books, that's kind of been a common through line. Whether it's riffing on Bill Watterson's Calvin and Hobbes in my breakout book Spencer and Locke, or wedding imagery in Going to the Chapel, my romantic action crime comedy. Mm-hmm. The Boy Scouts of America in my most recent series, Scouts Honor, over at Aftershock, which you can order the trade through your local comic shop now. And yeah, the Wizard of Oz, it really kind of stood out to me because I think that's, first off, everybody knows the Judy Garland film. It's through cultural osmosis at this point. Everybody knows the imagery, if not having watched the actual film. And I think it's because the characters are really populated by these very strong archetypes. Dorothy, the Scarecrow, the Tin Man, and the Lion, you kind of immediately know what they look like, what their personal arcs are, and sort of the way that they can kind of navigate through a space, and also sort of navigate a world emotionally. And those archetypes, they're so strong that it also makes them very flexible. And it means that you can really kind of remix and build upon these tropes in a way that feels organic and, most importantly, doesn't break the archetypes. And so that's been really fun to play with. I mean, for this book, I've sort of taken almost like a Chrono Trigger or a Final Fantasy VII approach to the team dynamics. So if you're a fan of any of those games, you'll certainly love what we're doing here. But yeah, they're classic and they're timeless, and I think that gives us a lot of wiggle room to play with.
Yeah. Well, it's also not as intimidating because they're familiar to the reader too. No matter how different they are, you still have that familiarity of, like you said, what they look like, and
yeah,
right, and what they used to be, if not what they are now.
Yeah.
Right.
Because you're in a position where you can, they're like you said, they're iconic characters, archetypal characters. You can do a lot of playing around with the world around them, and they're still them. And
yeah.
And at this point, we get to see it'll be interesting to see how Dorothy brings them together, like you said.
Yeah. Desperation will create some unlikely allies. It's really kind of that, I think, is probably the biggest theme of our second issue. Our first issue was very much meeting our new Dorothy, and sort of getting into her head a little bit, sort of the traumas and disillusionment that she feels, that she carries since coming home from Iraq and Afghanistan. and establishing the land of Oz and sort of figuring out, well, how did we get here? And realizing like, oh, this was in the text, it's not a happily ever after kind of thing, the way that Dorothy's grandmother did all this. Now that we've sort of had our vegetables and established all the exposition, now we really get to put pedal to the metal in our second issue. Dorothy, without spoiling too much, she's answered the hero's call, and now she's, helping lead the resistance against the Scarecrow's regime. And what I think she's finding to be so different than from her time in the Middle East is when she was a member of the U.S. Army, it was very much she was one of many. There was a degree of anonymity there. She wasn't calling the shots. But in Oz, Dorothy is kind of the closest thing to royalty over there, just based on who her grandmother was. And so all eyes are upon her. There's a real weight of responsibility. But she fights in part because I think she sees a potential for catharsis, sort of a chance to correct things that once went wrong, or maybe giving herself a second chance. And unfortunately, what's going to bring all this to a head is the location of the all-powerful silver slippers have been found. And that's something that everybody wants. The Scarecrow in particular wants those silver slippers so he can invade our world, to turn Oz into sort of a never-ending war economy. And so Dorothy's she's going to have to protect two worlds, but she's outgunned and outmanned. And so she's going to have to turn to some unexpected corners for help. And that's really going to be how we explore new corners of the occupied zone in this second issue, and also introduce new characters, particularly the Prince of Lions and Jack Pumpkinhead. So we've got some really fun stuff in store for issue 2. Just seeing what we have, it's really blown me away. I think it's some of the best work that I've been involved in to date. And seeing artist Ruben Rojas, colorist Whitney Kogar, and letterer DC Hopkins, they're really just operating at just peak performance. And I couldn't be more proud to work with them.
And if you want to see what those characters look like, you did give us a pretty good sneak peek on your Kickstarter, right?
Yes, I did. And in fact, there's, if you want even more, a little bit more, Multiversity Comics actually posted some character designs, exclusive character designs from Ruben Rojas of the Lion and Jack Pumpkinhead. So if you really want to get a sense of who that, what they look like, you can check on there. But we went for a pretty big preview on our Kickstarter. For those who didn't follow our first campaign, we're doing 3 Kickstarter campaigns, and they're all going to be double-sized issues. That was sort of my way of justifying what is, traditionally a higher price point from Kickstarter books. There's sort of artisanal comics sent directly from the creators. And I also wanted to spare myself a nervous breakdown from not shipping and distributing 6 Kickstarters. I'd rather do 3.
Smart man.
As a result, we wanted to make sure we were really generous with the previews. And so you can see on our Kickstarter page, we have the first 11 pages of issue 1, in case you missed it, as well as the first 11 pages of our second issue. And, the thing I really want to stress is if you missed the first OZ Kickstarter campaign, you are totally in the clear. We are offering print and digital catch-up tiers. And on top of that, we will also have a backer kit store at the end of the campaign. That's where we're going to collect everyone's shipping information. And you'll be able to add on any covers, anything you want to add on. You can add those purchases on before you check out. So, we're trying to meet our readers where they're at. And, we're trying to sort of make it as flexible for them as possible and as affordable, making sure that it's not, sort of taking a double bite out of our add-on purchases, which is the reason we're not doing add-ons on the Kickstarter platform directly. It's fun. It's kind of it's very exciting for me as my sort of war chest of books and materials increases to be able to offer all of that either bundled at a discount or a la carte at cover price. And just seeing sort of the enthusiasm from our readership, it's really this is only the first day. And I'm very excited to see what happens over the next 29.
Me too. I said you exploded.
Yeah, kind of.
Yeah.
Holy cow. Yeah, for reference, like you said, we're recording this on Monday night after the campaign started early Monday morning. Um, it is currently well past 250% funded. I believe it funded in somewhere in the vicinity of 40 minutes.
Yep, 40 minutes. Yeah, we are a little less than 12 hours into the campaign, and we are almost 275% funded.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's very much it's a surreal kind of thing. They say comics will break your heart, and I've felt that before. But these are one of the days the comics loves you back. And you got to take these. This is about as unequivocal a win as you're going to get. And so I'll definitely be holding on to this on the darker days of my career.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Shows you your fans believe in what you're doing. I know. I've been counting it down with you.
We're trying to earn that trust.
Yep.
I know with the subject matter that I tend to tackle, which is, put generously, ruining people's childhoods. I know it would be very easy to go super grim and gritty and just go for shock value's sake, just kind of the whole edgelord thing. And that's not really what I'm about. I think shock, that'll get your foot in the door once, but it will alienate people, and there's you don't want to, that doesn't build any sort of long-term investment or emotional engagement. Mm-hmm. And so for me, my stories up to this point have always been about, we start in kind of a dark, with darker material and in sort of a darker setting, but it's always about kind of the redemptive climb out. Most of my characters are usually defined by some kind of trauma, either in their past or present. And their narrative arcs are sort of, how do they come out of that? Can they come out of that? Are their scars going to define them? Or can they, if not accept them, can they live with them? And I think that contrast, makes our work palatable. It doesn't make it oppressive, because I think everybody has a degree of trauma in their lives. And I think seeing characters like Dorothy or Detective Locke or Kit or even Emily, if they can sort of survive their past, maybe we can too.
Yep. Hopeful.
But I am also ruining your childhood. So.
Well, sure, of course.
There's a lot of that going around. So.
Yeah.
I see every so often, you see the bad actors on Twitter who are, they're harassing some poor comics creator, being like, "Oh, you ruined my childhood." And of course, my first reaction is, "Why don't you complain to me about ruining your childhood? I actually give credit where it's due."
The best one I saw the other day, they told her she killed comics in cold blood. It was like, wow.
Honestly, at that point, that's not even like an insult. That's just kind of cool.
Yeah. I think she printed T-shirts.
Somebody once said that they said that Spencer and Locke was, quote, like kindergarten level Alan Moore. And I remember reading that review and being like, this guy does not know what an insult sounds like, because all I'm hearing is Alan Moore.
Right. You just got compared to Alan Moore, man. Right. That's awesome.
I was like, so I'm like Alan Moore, you're saying? Readers, God love them. If listening to a reader's opinion is the cost of admission for a business like this, I'm getting off easy.
We wish you luck. That's some pretty toxic waters here lately.
Yeah. You see a lot of creators who are leaving Twitter, partially as a result of that. And I'm planning on sticking around as long as I'm able, because I really do feel I've been very fortunate. I'd say 99% of all my reader interactions have been pretty positive. And I think that's by the privilege of being, a straight white cis man in comics and one who's worked in the independent scene versus, sort of a big two licensed book. But yeah, I think mostly my interactions with the readership have been positive. The only time it's ever gotten a little heated is if they're, telling me that they should be allowed to pirate my books, or if they're complaining about international shipping costs. But I think by and large, I've been really fortunate. The fandom has been really kind to me and very welcoming and very supportive of me and my collaborators' work. And so, while I make jokes about, the occasional bad apple that I run into on Twitter, it's really not representative of what I've been lucky enough to experience. And I hope that I'm sort of able to continue to build that readership and build that relationship and earn that trust in a way that, hopefully the bad actors will self-select themselves out of my timeline.
Yep. Well, it's kind of hard to argue with a guy who's posting Ruby on his timeline too. I couldn't.
Yeah. No. So for those who don't know the context, Ruby is my puppy. She's a little Toto dog, and
so cute.
She's a sweetheart. She's going to be 1 year old next month, and we got her. I'm a big Toto fan. My family's had Cairn Terriers since before I was born. Our last dog, Holly, she passed just before the pandemic, and I was writing a lot of the OZ when we first brought her home with us. And Ruby, we picked her up 3 days after the last issue showed up. After like I think 27 boxes made it to my 2-bedroom apartment.
Wow.
I think we got our books on a Wednesday, and we picked up Ruby that Saturday. So she's a Kickstarter dog through and through,
and you succeeded at not actually shipping Ruby to some poor unsuspecting Kickstarter backer, so that's good.
I would have been happy. I would have been like, bonus.
That would have been the best one since the chocolate you got, right?
Thank you. Yeah, right.
Ruby loves Kickstarters. We had a roll of masking tape. That was her first chew toy. She used to run it around her little pen for hours on end. So it feels a little full circle. She's a sweet pup. Kind of a terrible writer's assistant, but she's a baby. She's still learning.
Can't make coffee for nothing.
Right.
I still shamelessly use her to promote my work. Why
wouldn't you? I mean, come on.
Yeah, use every advantage. So yeah, she's in the other room because she gets very jealous of me doing podcasts. So I have to keep her out when I'm talking with people because otherwise she gets jealous.
Oh, I have one of them too.
Yeah. So you know what I'm talking about.
Oh yeah, he's made a few cameos on here.
We all know what it is.
So the one that was not Kickstarter was your Scouts Honor?
Yeah. So the OZ was my very first Kickstarter campaign. My first books, Spencer and Locke and Spencer and Locke 2 and Going to the Chapel, those were all published through Action Lab Entertainment.
True.
And then Scouts Honor just came out earlier this year through Aftershock, and that was such a wonderful experience and one that I think I really learned a lot in doing. For those who haven't read Scouts Honor, it's like Mad Max meets The Hunger Games, or maybe meets Mulan. It's about decades after a nuclear war, a cult has risen from the ashes, and their Bible is an old Boy Scout manual. And so a few generations down the line, we meet Kit, who's a young initiate with a secret. She's had to conceal her identity as a woman in order to serve as a Ranger Scout because they are sort of virulently men only. And what happens to Kit when she discovers her entire way of life was built on a lie? And so, it was a challenging book to write for a lot of reasons. It really it tapped into a lot of very personal stuff for me, sort of my own political and spiritual reawakenings once I had left home for college, and kind of realized that a lot of things that I had been told were gospel in this very conservative Midwestern upbringing, and as a Jewish person, and kind of realizing like, oh, a lot of the stuff that I was told was gospel is not really as bedrock as I thought it was, and sort of the disorientation that came from having to recalibrate according to my values when I was kind of slapped in the face with reality. And it was a challenging book to write. I wrote it during the pandemic. If anybody tells you that writing a post-apocalyptic book during the pandemic was easy or fun, they're lying to you. It was completely kind of unintentional. I pitched the series the fall before the pandemic, but based on the way that the paperwork kind of trickled down, I wound up signing my contract officially like a week before everything shut down.
Oh man.
And so I had written the first issue, I'd written the outline, but I wrote and rewrote, the whole series, in lockdown. And, I think it goes back to what I was talking about earlier about, it can't just be edgy for edgy's sake. There's got to be a happy ending here. There's got to be a redemptive arc. And I felt especially with a post-apocalyptic story when it kind of, there was some times where, you look out the window and like the world can end at any minute. I wrote this during an election season, terrible election season. And, so I really thought hard about like, how do we make this book a little lighter on its feet despite the post-apocalyptic setting? I felt the first thing was there has to be a happy ending. And this has to be something that's more about just kind of grittiness and violence. There has to be a more thoughtful core to it. And, I was really fortunate. I was working with some terrific editors. That was the first book I ever really worked with an editor on. I worked with Christina Harrington, who is just terrific. I can't say enough good things about her. And Mike Martz, who I've known since college. When I interned at DC Comics, he was the Batman editor at the time. Working with them, it really kind of inspired me to bring my A game, and also kind of forced me to be a little bit more flexible and a little bit more nimble on my feet. We were putting that book out every 6 to 7 weeks. It was the time frame on that was accelerated, to say the least. And realizing that, like, hey, you got to pick your battles, and if your artist, especially, I loved working with artist Luca Castellanguida. He's a terrific artist. But there was the occasional, pitfall of things being lost in translation because he literally did not speak English. We were translating all of our scripts through his agent. Mm-hmm. And realizing, like, okay, like, Luca's going to put his own spin on things, and sometimes it's going to be an artistic choice, and sometimes it's just going to be like a lost in translation thing. How do you solve that? How do you account for that? And if you'd asked me a year and a half ago, I would have been like, oh no, like, you have a vision. You have to stay true to that exact vision. And now I'm realizing that sometimes it's about specificity. Sometimes it's about just kind of thinking on your feet. And sometimes, and this has been a hard truth for me to learn, you're your own worst critic. And there are certain things that you will agonize over that no one will notice. And that's happened to me a number of times on every single book. There's always something in there that I thought was super clever, or something that I was like sweating that like it didn't come out the way I wanted it to. And nobody cared. Nobody noticed. That's a double-edged sword. Sometimes that's a relief when you're like, oh, that page didn't turn out quite as well as I was hoping, and nobody says anything. And sometimes it gets really frustrating where you're like, oh man, I had some like this really clever structure and nobody said anything. Not even my girlfriend who's lived with me for years. But yeah, I think it's taken some of the stress off of making comics, and I think that's something that hopefully as I continue to make comics, it'll be less and less stressful as it goes on, because otherwise I'm not going to live long enough to make too many more of them. But I think it was a wonderful learning experience, and I think I really grew as a writer and as a collaborator And so, yeah, I can't say enough good things about Aftershock and everybody I worked with there.
And the trade for that is out now or comes out very soon?
That'll be September 8th.
Okay, very soon.
So, yeah, it's a trade. So, like, final order cutoff isn't really a thing because it's a trade. So you can tell your local comic shop to pre-order it for you. The code is JUL for July 211246, I believe the code is. See if I got that. Yep, I got it right on the first try. So yeah, tell your local comic shop to order it because yeah, I would love more people to read that book. I think people seem to really, the reviewers seem to really enjoy the book, and I hope you will too.
That one was good. Now, was there 5 issues in that or 6?
5, yeah.
5.
Yeah, it was one of those books that on the one hand it felt so tight that I was like, I can't possibly fit in everything I want to fit in, and at other times when I was finishing that last issue, I was like, oh my god, I'm about to die. If I had one more issue, they would have had to bury me with it. Pacing is always a thing. I think I kind of came of age when the standard page count went from 22 to 20. And every time I write a script now, I'm like beating my head against a wall because it's always, if I had 2 more pages, I could make this work. I could make this work in a way that I feel really good about it. But it's just not really the way that it works anymore. And so yeah, you got to be a little less precious about it, and you got to be a little bit more improvisational. But yeah, at the end of the day, when you see an issue that was really tricky and seeing how it turned out, you usually feel pretty good when the thing's in your hands.
Yeah. Well, I definitely enjoyed it.
Thank you.
So, interestingly, you mentioned as part of your kind of elevator pitch for Scouts Honor, you mentioned Mad Max, which you also mentioned for the OZ. Clearly, this was a significant level of influence for you.
Yeah, it's interesting because it's a little for Scouts Honor, it really is. It's the post-apocalyptic elements of it all. I mean, it's sort of the old way of living is gone, and I think that means that there's a degree of hope that's been lost with it. The OZ, I think it's more of its aesthetic, and it's the way, particularly that informed our lead character, Dorothy. There's definitely a Furiosa vibe to her, and that was sort of a big core component to when I was working on this. I would say if I had to compare to the two characters, Dorothy is like Furiosa, and Kit is like Katniss Everdeen in a way. Mm-hmm. Kit's a little bit more innocent, despite having kind of grown under this like very punishing doctrine of the Ranger Scouts of America. Whereas like Dorothy, even though she wasn't like the top shot caller or anything, I think she knows what it's like to be a leader of men. And she knows what it's like to be in fights that are just so vicious and brutal that you never know if you're going to make it out alive. And if you do, what it's going to cost you. And so, yeah, I mean, definitely, I've been a fan of that aesthetic for a long time. A big influence on me beyond, Mad Max is Fallout. I kind of love the aesthetic that goes into that, and particularly our take on the Tin Soldier. That was stuff that I showed Ruben Rojas. I'd showed him a lot of the power armor from Fallout, and just being like, how can we incorporate this as not a man in a suit, but a man who is the suit, and kind of cool, like reclaimed, scrap, and turning that into sort of this badass warrior. But yeah, I think where the two books kind of differentiate is the OZ. It's a war story. It really is kind of, we're sort of able to have our cake and eat it too, because we are exploring kind of, PTSD and trauma, and sort of, is there such a thing as a just war? But also kind of just the more, high flying adventure, something like a Star Wars. It is a fight between good and evil. Whereas Scouts Honor, I'd say it's a more philosophical book. It's a book about religion. It's a book about, what happens when you find out that your faith is built on a foundation of sin and lies. And, you could either sort of succumb to disillusionment, you can just sort of leave all of it behind, or what happens if you still feel like there's some positive qualities here, and so you have to do, I think, a little bit more delicate surgery, where you sort of have to figure out what parts are just so toxic they must be removed, and what's the parts that are positive that need to stay, and what do we replace these empty holes with? And so, yeah, I feel like Kit, without spoiling too much, I feel like she grew as a character in Scout's Honor, but I don't know if she changed. I feel like she forced the world to change in her image, Whereas Dorothy, I see a bigger change to her as the story unfolds, because she really has to kind of come to terms with her past as a soldier and her grandmother's heritage, and sort of is there any redemption in her future? And that's something that we'll be diving into a bit more in issue 2 and issue 3.
Awesome.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see, because she really kind of seems pretty lost at the beginning of the first issue.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see her in part 2, because she has answered the hero's call, but there's still there's some doubts, and I think that is going to be something that she's going to have to really navigate in a way, because in certain ways this is a very different battlefield, but the other, sometimes you don't have to squint too hard to see that it's different battlefield, same war. And so that's the burden of responsibility is very heavy on Dorothy, and I think that's going to be something, especially with her interaction with our take on the Courageous Lion, that's going to inform a big part of this issue.
David, I've always enjoyed your work.
Thank you.
There's nothing that I wouldn't recommend to somebody to read.
Thank you.
Because you hit topics,
mm-hmm.
You are able to convey great imagery with word, and that makes a difference. I have recommended several of your I've recommended your books to several people, and thank goodness they pay attention to me.
Right.
Go ahead.
This is sort of my neuroses, where I'm hearing, like, you haven't put out any bad books, and I just hear in the voice in my head, yet.
Oh no. No, I don't expect you to either. No. I don't think you will. You will not disappoint me, I know.
I appreciate the vote of confidence. I'm not the fastest writer out there. I think, as anybody waiting for Spencer and Lock 3 can attest. I've been working on other books, guys, I swear. But it's, yeah, I see it as the only thing that I can carry with me from book to book is my reputation. At the end of the day, the money certainly isn't the thing for me, because if it was about money, I wouldn't be in comics. And even, I hold a greater value on the numbers of, like, how many people are reading. But even then, that is kind of, those are going to rise and fall, and I have less control over that than I think. Ultimately, it's just, did I put out a book that, like, you could tell I left it all out of the field? And that's something that's really important to me, because I know what a privilege it is to have this platform. I'm so grateful to all the readers and retailers and press and publishers who have all kind of come together and championed my work over the years. And so I feel like the least that I owe everybody is my best, the best that I can deliver. It doesn't necessarily mean that every book is going to be operating at the same scale. But if I'm sort of trying new muscle groups and I'm developing as a creator, then as long as I'm taking swings, it doesn't matter how big the book is. It's always going to be a big swing for the execution.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I some of it is just because I get restless, and so I have to find something that kind of hits a certain window. There's a certain style of thing that really appeals to me. It's usually mashups, and that's in part of that's utilitarian, because if I ever get kind of in a rut trying to write something, I like having a different gear to switch to. But it's also just, I get restless. And having a concept that kind of makes me laugh and kind of keeps me on my toes, that's what helps me kind of get across the finish line, a lot easier. I mean, I'm working on an outline right now that's a lot more straightforward. And boy, is it kicking my ass. It's been kicking my ass for a lot longer than I care to admit, because it's the different gears are a lot harder to parse. And so I kind of like trying to figure out what's the next pineapple pizza that I can make. What's the next chocolate and peanut butter that I can slam together. I'm not smart enough to have invented peanut butter or jelly. I'm just the idiot that put them together. And that's kind of my MO. And I think, people seem to, I've been lucky enough that I think I found a readership that digs that. But I think, it's just how do we stay memorable, and how do we keep stretching ourselves as creators? And I'm really lucky that I work with A-list collaborators, Ruben Rojas on the OZ, Luca Kesseling-Guida on Scout's Honor, Jorge Santiago Jr. and Spencer Locke, and Gavin Guidry on Going to the Chapel. They're fantastic. And I think by the strength of their talent, it really inspires me to try to bring my A game and to try to stretch myself as a writer. And it's the best job in the world, and I want to prove that I'm worthy of it.
Well, I can see the collaboration you have with the artist, and I can see that you give him ideas and he gives you perspectives too.
Yes.
Which is what makes a good story.
Ruben is just, Ruben is probably the most talented world builder I've ever worked with. You see it in his designs, you see it in every setting. It's part of the reason why, it's taken a little bit extra time between our Kickstarters. And, part of that is Scout's Honor came out, and I didn't want to cannibalize attention from one book to the other. But, there was also, Ruben lives in Spain, a big COVID kind of hotspot. And so there were some delays related to that. But at the same time, I think, a project like the OZ is perfect for Ruben, because like me, he doesn't want to settle. He doesn't want to cut corners. He doesn't want to deliver anything less than his best. But that means that, he might not be hitting like turning out an issue every 7 weeks, kind of schedule. And that's fine, because I think our readers, we're launching almost a year to the day since our last Kickstarter began. I think they're going to see the book and realize it was worth the wait. And so that's something that I, Ruben and I talked about this very early on. At the end of the day, nobody cares the distance in time between issue 1 and issue 2. They only care if once they're reading the whole story, is it any good?
Yep.
And so that's something that really that is really important to me.
I didn't realize it had almost been a year.
It'll be a year tomorrow. 1 year ago tomorrow that our first Kickstarter launched, and a lot's changed in a year, but it's nice to see that some things are still constant.
Yeah. I think too, with your scheduling, doing the Kickstarter thing too gives you that flexibility where you can work with someone and you don't have to settle,
Yeah.
or
exactly.
rush.
Yeah. Could we have done this on a month-to-month basis? Yes, but the book would not have come out until 2022, 2023.
Yeah.
And I think, Kickstarter, it really, I think it certainly makes it makes comics a little bit more financially equitable and viable, but also it makes it, you're not beholden to the month to month schedule.
Yeah.
And it's not to say, I mean, there are plenty of books that I love having come out month to month, but having, a Kickstarter, it kind of feels like a special occasion. I think that's really something. And it's a different way of making comics, but it's one that it's really fulfilling.
Cool. That means we get to keep you around for longer.
Yes. Oh yeah. I tried all the stable jobs. I'm no good at them. So yes. I want to stay in comics as long as they'll have me, and even then I'll self-publish if I love this job, and I haven't felt this is the most accomplished I've ever felt is doing this job, and so it's one that I take very seriously, and one that I want to stay in for the long haul.
So you said Scouts Honor you put through Action, and with this
I put that through Aftershock.
Aftershock. Yeah. I'm sorry. Doing Kickstarter and working for a company like that, which one do you like better?
Oh, there's pros and cons to both. I mean, I would say that working with a publisher like Aftershock, I mean, first off, there's the structure of it all, where I'm kind of like, all right, I have a deadline, and like I know that like I have a safety net, like I have editors who will be like, this sucks, if it's and on top of that, they will handle all the editorial work, which, editorial work is like a double-edged sword for me. I think I'm decently good at it, but it is a million times harder than actually writing a script. You sort of have to be like a traffic cop and an art director and a hype man and a therapist and a priest. It's a necessary job if you want to make comics, especially independent comics, but it is also the biggest pain in the ass part of my job. Working with Aftershock, I didn't have to do that. I probably had to put in like 20% of like the editorial eye that I usually do on a book, because I had actual editors, who were making sure the pages were coming in on time, and help match make a creative team for me, and paid the creative team. I didn't have to pay for the creative team, which is
that's always nice.
That's definitely nice.
That was certainly, not to say it was a zero stress environment, but it was certainly less stress. Because I knew like, oh well, we're gonna get this book done in 6 months, and my editors are going to be the ones sort of making sure everybody's on time, and I don't have to worry about it. Whereas working with something like the OZ, and to a certain extent, Spencer and Locke can go to the chapel, there's less compromise, because I'm interfacing directly with everybody, and so I can kind of say, well, here's what I'm thinking about X, Y, and Z, and usually they do it, unless there's like a really good reason not to do it. We're all like, okay, let's just, do the thing. Is a lot more moving parts to it, and so I think that makes it take a little longer, especially because, it's one thing having an editor for an established publisher, you hit your deadlines, or you're more likely to hit them. When you're just dealing with me, they're gonna be like, well, you're a fellow freelancer, like I'm busy. But there is something, I mean, I do feel a certain degree of ownership, over a book like the OZ that it's impossible to replicate in a different publishing environment. So there are pros and cons to both approaches. But I think, so I've been talking about this a lot with friends of mine, especially talking about Kickstarter versus the direct market versus Substack now. And I think comics in general, and I think it comes down all the way to the Marvel versus DC, which one are you a bigger fan of? I think we're conditioned to see things in binary. And that's, I think, the big mistake. I think it's never about which is better, one or the other, because I think ultimately, at least what I want for my goals, you need both. You need to be kind of operating between both, and really kind of using the tools you pick up in both environments. So, I will always keep doing books in the direct market because I love the direct market. But at the same time, there are going to be certain books where I don't want to wait for permission. And Kickstarter, the community for that is so vocal and passionate and dedicated that I will be using Kickstarter, for the foreseeable future, for as long as the platform is viable to do so. Yeah. And, personally, I see a lot of future cross-pollination between the two, whether it's sort of alternating projects or, I saw, what Boom Studios did for Berserker or Scott Snyder did for Noctera, where, the Kickstarter and direct market audiences, there's some overlap, but it's not comprehensive by any means. I think there's a lot of Kickstarter backers who will not step foot in a comic shop, no matter what you do. Gun to their head, they would not go to a comic shop. And just like there's some comics readers who would only buy their books at a con, or only buy their books on Amazon or Comixology or Barnes and Noble, and some people who would just read books on Webtoon. And I think it's incumbent upon comics creators to try to reach out to that diaspora of readership, to really kind of reconnect them and invite them to the same table. And so I think, being able to dip your toes in different platforms and different environments, I think it's the only way you can kind of future-proof yourself as a comics creator. And it's the only way, I think, to keep building your readership outside of the standard channels in an organic way.
Yeah.
Man, for a guy who writes post-apocalyptic war comics, you sure are a peacemaker. That's probably the Midwestern side of me. I grew up in Missouri, and so I'm always like, let's give peace a chance. But I try to look at the comics industry through the lens of sustainability. I want to be a 30-year man. I want to be like a Grant Morrison or a Dan Slott, just somebody who has been doing this and continues to do it and continues to thrive and continues to have a platform and has made a living not just on the work that they continue to put out, but also on the strength of their back catalog. Or you see somebody like Rick Remender, who has a whole library of creator-owned work under his belt. And, sometimes he's branched it off into multimedia, but just in general, I'm sure that between Deadly Class and Low and Fear Agent and, Tokyo Ghost and who knows how many other. Ascender.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Remender's got, he's got a healthy body of work that, you think of Image, you can't help but think of his work. And so I think, that kind of staying power and relevancy and back catalog, that's something that I aspire to. And so, if you want to be in this for the long haul, you got to learn to roll with the punches. So I'm trying to watch the punches as they're thrown and roll with them as best I can.
Yeah, because technology is definitely changing that quick.
Yeah, you see it with Substack. I think that's going to be an interesting experiment. I mean, I can't speak to a whole lot about it. I think it's going to really depend on these creators and how reliable they are with their scheduling, and what are future print plans with things, and what's the strength of the work that they're putting out on Substack as a platform. I don't have the answers to that. And what happens a year from now, even if in the best case scenario, when the deals of the arrangement change, the terms of the arrangement, I should say, change. I don't know. I don't know the answers to that. Those are questions for smarter, more connected people than me.
Or people with a time machine.
Yeah, or people with a time machine. Because, if I had a time machine, the very first thing I would do is be like, well, what happens with Substack? That would be 100% my first thing.
Absolutely.
So, I think regardless, though, I think these creators' minds are in the right place. Just sort of what's the future going to look like? And, after having, I think, an existential crisis during the pandemic, I think a lot of people are sort of taking stock and figuring out, how do we pivot from here in case anything like that ever happens again.
Well, I kind of think before the pandemic, we saw a lot of our creatives getting kind of, I won't say burnt out, but burned by the industry.
Sure.
And, we are seeing more Kickstarters now and Substack and that kind of thing, because I see that their way of taking back the driver's seat.
Yeah.
Where, for now and here on out, this is mine. You're not paying me and taking this. It's,
It reminds me a lot of Image when Image first got started. Creators are, I think, naturally a little suspicious of, the established order because we've seen what's happened. We've seen people not just leaving money on the table, but, being driven in the arms of the Hero Initiative, with no benefits and no, and no financial wherewithal. And that's what happens when we're in an industry that, there's no union, there's no guild. And I understand the economics of that, don't support that. But I think as a result, creators are always looking for, what's the angle here? Is there a better way to do this that will bring more money to the hands of the creators and, less money to a middleman?
Right.
And so, I think the Image Comics model, I think is really a shining light for a lot of that stuff. But I conversations that I've had with fellow creators, I think even that has its limitations, especially if you don't have a Marvel or a DC background and a following to bring back with you.
Yeah.
Otherwise you can, be selling, 7,000 copies of a book and only be taking home 4K back with you. And if you got to pay an art team, suddenly you're, that's not a lot even for the brass ring of the direct market.
Yeah.
So I think something needs to change, and so I applaud these creators for trying something new, and whether or not this works out, hopefully it'll shake something loose for the rest of us.
Yeah. Well, I agree with Image. I think it really did make people kind of, well, if they can do it, why can't you guys do this?
Sure, absolutely. I love Kickstarter. I mean, I think it plays to my strengths as an independent creator. I don't have a background like a Scott Snyder or a James Tynion, where they each have a decade of some of the biggest licensed titles under their belts. So of course, a following would follow them to any project. But I think Kickstarter is a great way to sort of organically build that readership from the ground up. And I was saying this to somebody the other day, especially at a time where, conventions are kind of few and far between with the Delta variant. It's nice it kind of feels like a digital convention in a way. There's that real degree of interactivity with the readership, both, on Twitter and Facebook and Instagram, but also, just on the Kickstarter platform itself. And I find that to be really energizing. And it's very fun, and it really just kind of, it makes me excited to get up out of bed. So I like I've said, I plan on doing at least one Kickstarter a year for the foreseeable future. And, hopefully as I get a little bit more skilled as a creator, maybe even doing it twice a year. I think it's just a great way to sort of get that excitement and that support. And also, I think it's a way to actually make a living at this.
Good. I'm glad it's working.
Yeah.
So how have you celebrated? Have you celebrated?
Not yet. Not yet. Not yet. I think I based on the spell, I think my girlfriend's making dinner. But I think I'm gonna celebrate by writing thank you notes to everybody tonight. Have some pasta is what it smells like. And, maybe watch some TV, just to kind of unplug a little bit. I mean, the worst part of all of it is the best part, which is I still have other deadlines that I got to hit. I still have other scripts due. And thankfully I sort of, I finished a draft, and I told my editors that I need 48 hours to sort of, to let it settle and see if I need to tweak anything. And wouldn't you know it, those first 48 hours of my Kickstarter. So, it's great. I mean, I spent a long time wanting to be here.
Yeah.
And so that, as a result, the work, even when it's exhausting, even when it's infuriating, even when it's frustrating, even when it breaks your heart, I wouldn't want to do anything else. I think the good days in this job are so far outweigh any hassle. And so, yeah, it really feels, it's more like a calling. And so, yeah, I'm excited. I'll probably write thank you notes and do a lettering pass tonight. That's how I'll celebrate.
Just do a little happy dance.
Yeah. Ask me in 30 days. That's when I'll really be celebrating in a big way.
Right. Pop the cork.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, we wish you success. You really deserve it.
Well, thank you so much for having me on the show. And anyone who's listening, if you want to back the OZ, you can visit bit.ly/the OZ comic. You can back any reward level you want. We're trying to meet readers where they're at. So we've got things for any level of budget. If you want to follow me on social media, I'm on Twitter and Instagram at PeposeD. David Pepose Comics on Facebook. You can subscribe to my newsletter, Pep Talks, at bit.ly/pepnews. Or you can visit my website at davidpepose.com.
And we'll link it all in the show notes.
Yep, that's what I was about to say as well. So. Well, thank you, David, and congratulations once again.
Thank you so much.
Yep.
Thank you guys so much for having me. Have a great rest of your night.
Thanks a lot, bud.
You enjoy your dinner.
You too. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Dave.
Bye.
Bye.
And we'll be right back. And we're back. It's time for weekly picks, and leading off is Mike.
Hey, weekly picks. Woohoo.
Yay. So excited about going first, too, aren't you?
Thrilled. Thrilled beyond measure. My first pick is from Image Comics, and this is a graphic novel called Old Head. And it is the story of a former basketball star who goes back to his hometown for his mother's funeral, only to find that his mother had kind of a mysterious past that involved Dracula. So it appears that we're getting an early start on Halloween this year because it seems like an awful lot of horror stuff coming out this week.
Mm-hmm.
Which, hey, cool for us because we like that sort of thing. So, and this looks like it's going to be a good bit of fun. So I'm checking it out.
Sounds interesting.
That does sound good.
Alrighty. I am next. And for my first pick, it's from DC Comics. It's first issue of new series, Superman 78. And this is based off the Richard Donner, Christopher Reeve film series. And this is written by Robert Venditti, who we have enjoyed his work before, with art by Wilfredo Torres. And the first story arc involves Brainiac. I mean, what a way to start off, because that was supposedly going to be... He was going to be the villain for Superman 5 if they ever got everything back together and brought Chris Reeve back. He was going to be the villain, so who knows? But I'm curious to see how this series will go. But it's fun that they're actually, DC did the Batman 66 and the Wonder Woman 77, so it's really cool that they've gone and decided to do the Batman 89 and Superman 78. So hopefully those will be just as good as the previous series.
Cool.
Sweet.
I sure hope so.
All right, Les, you're next.
Let's see. My first pick is from Ahoy Comics. Ahoy! It is Happy Hour. This is a collection of the series that Ahoy did for this series or this book, Happy Hour. This is a satire, and in this, the America is under control of the joy police, who enforce the code that everybody has to be happy. In this book, there are two young people who go on the run looking for the state of melancholy that they can just sit back and enjoy. I want this because it's a different look at the apocalypse. I mean, this is apocalyptic, but to accept the fact that you have to be happy 24/7, it just doesn't do it. So this should be fun.
Cool.
That does sound good.
Yep. Alrighty. Liz.
All right. For my first pick, it's from Albatross Funny Books, and it's called Lester of the Lesser Gods. This will follow Lester, who they describe as a 32-year-old man LARPer who lives with his mother. A mother who constantly reminds him of his lowly conception in a biker bar bathroom. Yeah, but Mama didn't get that gimpy hip from knocking boots with any old biker. It was a god. So now that Satan has unleashed an apocalypse, Lester becomes important. Actually, they say, and Satan shall suckle his knuckle. This one sounds really cool. Just from the preview or the synopsis that they're giving us, I'm expecting a lot of humor out of this book. Some really good writers on this. So definitely if you can pick this one up, pick it up. I don't see, normally they'll let us know if like issue 2 or 3 is coming out. I don't see that for this title. So it may actually be a one-shot, which would be pretty cool. But yeah. I definitely want to get this one.
Interesting.
Neat.
Yeah, this was on my list too.
Alrighty. Mikey.
Alrighty, my second pick is from Keen Spot. And I am going with the collection, the trade for the first 6 issues of Junior High Horrors. And they've titled the trade Freaks and Geeks. And this is actually, now that I'm thinking about this, I think Les may have mentioned this book when it first came out. Partly because it seems like something he would get a kick out of. But yeah, this is a junior high school horror parody series with lots of interesting stories and weird behaviors and weird stuff happening to people. And how could you not be curious about what does horror look like in junior high? I mean, I personally can't think of anything more horrific than my junior high experience. So, maybe all those years of therapy have made me ready to read this book. I'm not sure. We'll have to find out.
There you go. Sounds good.
Yeah,
Yeah.
2 is on my list.
I suspected it might be.
Okay, I'm up again, and for my second choice is a new series from American Mythology entitled Zorro Flights. And there's a couple reasons what caught my attention on this. If you've read some of the more recent Zorro tales, they've kind of branched him out a little bit. He's battled Cthulhu, he's battled zombies, he's battled a lot of other supernatural forces. Now he's going to be battling a dragon.
Ooh.
And not only is it a dragon, it's apparently a man-controlled dragon. So that's one reason. The other reason is this is written by Don McGregor, best known for writing Zorro Tales from the way back in the past. Matter of fact, this is his first Zorro title in 15 years. He's written some highly acclaimed Black Panther tales back in the 70s. Really a legend in the industry, and he's coming back to write Zorro. So I'm really excited about this book. So I definitely want to check this one out.
Sweet.
Yep.
You have reason.
Alrighty, Les.
Let's see. My second choice is something not as crazy as what I chose first. This is another choose your own adventure. This is titled 8th Grade Witch. And in this you get to plot your movement as you read. And the story is that it's about a witch in, obviously, 8th grade. And the mysterious witch Prudence Deadly is marching through graveyards and meeting ancestors of the townspeople. So I want to see how this is played out, because hopefully you've tried this with a choose your own adventure book of some sort, and it's so fascinating because you can go, okay, I'm going to go back now and I'm going to choose this direction, and you can do it hundreds of times and not have the same story.
Yeah.
So take a look at this. This is from Oni Press, and it's one of those that should appeal to most everybody.
I like those kind.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I remember first reading those a long, long time ago, like maybe junior high, maybe even earlier than that, and just being fascinated of, if you go one direction, that's how the story goes, and then you go back and you take the other turn, and it's just amazing how different everything goes from there. It would be interesting to see how a book can be written like that.
Especially a comic. That's
especially
that's
a comic.
got me interested. Yeah, when I had them back in junior high, like you said, they were all prose novels. I mean,
Right.
they didn't. If they had them back then in comic form, I never found them. So it would be cool.
No, I think the comics are a more recent thing, but just even the prose, just trying to keep things, how to keep track of everything, and then try to put it together. I've never thought about it, but it would be interesting for that. But yeah, I definitely want to check it as a comic.
Yep.
Do y'all remember on Big? That was one of his ideals, was to take a comic book where you could choose your own adventure, and then when they got done, they could buy another disc to put it in, and it'd give you another story in this comic book. Do y'all remember that when he was an adult?
I haven't seen Big in almost 40 years.
Oh,
It's been a while. Yeah, it's been a while since I've seen it too. But
yeah. So the ideal was thrown out there back in, what was that, the 80s?
It'd be like 84, 85, right?
Yeah.
Somewhere in there.
all right, Liz.
All right. For my second pick is one from Image Comics that they're calling a major Image comic 2021 event. It's called Echolands. This will follow Hope Red Hood, who is a thief, and it sounds like she's living in a place that kind of overcame its past, but in getting over their past, they forgot about it. So she's on the verge of figuring out what the dark past was, and by doing so, will actually start a war between the worlds. So this one should be pretty good. They say it's the award-winning Batwoman team. J.H. Williams and Hayden Blackman are going to do this one together. This one will be an ongoing, but it says it's a mashup adventure that combines from horror movie vampires, classic monsters, cyborg elves, Roman demigods, and a retro rocket ship. So it's got a little bit of everything for anybody.
Sounds like it.
Yeah,
Awesome.
should be pretty good. And also, each issue that comes out will also, you can get a raw cut version of it, which will be the artwork as it left J.H. Williams' desk. So, depending on you want the polished version or the uncut.
Very cool.
Neat.
Definitely sounds interesting. Yeah, would like to check that one out. All right. Any special shout-outs this week?
Just a quick thanks to David for hanging out with us, and
Definitely.
go check out his Kickstarter. You don't have to worry about it funding. That's
Yeah.
for
Oh,
sure.
God, no.
It's guaranteed.
40 minutes. 40
Uh-huh.
minutes.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Anything else? Any other shout-outs?
No.
If not, okay, we'll go on to our regular shout-outs. I want to thank Pop Goes to Culture Podcast Network for allowing us to be part of a great network of podcasters. Definitely check them out. There'll be a link in the show notes. I also want you to check out the fine men and women who make up Potter Family, who've been so gracious enough to spread the word of the fellowship on Twitter. The best way to check them out is to do a search, hashtag Potter Family, all one word, and just whatever catches your attention, download that episode, and hope you have a good time listening to them. And if you found another podcast you can check out. Thank you guys for your support as always. Want to thank Manny the Martyr for supplying the music to our podcast. In the show notes, you'll find a link to their music that you can check them out as well. Thank you guys as always. And finally, you, dear listener, thank you for downloading and listening to today's episode. We value your feedback. Any kind of question, comment, suggestion, complaint, observation, what have you, please send them our way. There are several ways you can do that. Our email address is email@thefellowshipofthegeeks.net. Or you can go to the website and go to the About Us page, and there is a Contact Us form that you can fill out. We mentioned our Discord earlier. Feel free to drop in there. We do have a particular channel designated for feedback, or if you just want to message us, you can do that as well. Social media, we are on Facebook, The Fellowship of the Geeks, and I already mentioned we're on Twitter, @Fellowship Geeks. Feel free to follow us either social medias or both. If you'd like to follow our personal Twitter accounts, Mike can be found @MikeyGeek. Liz can be found @LN_geek. Les may or may not be found @FakeLesWebster. And I can be found @TomTCGeek. And from wherever you download our episodes, if you would be so kind as to take a couple moments to rate and review our show, it would be greatly appreciated. Anything else before we say goodbye?
Just thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Hope you enjoyed our broadcast tonight.
Thank you for listening, everybody. We do appreciate your support as always. And until next time, geek on, my friends.
We thank you for listening to the show. Comments, suggestions, and questions can be sent to email@thefellowshipofthegeeks.net. You can follow us on Facebook at The Fellowship of the Geeks and on Twitter at Fellowship Geeks. Until next time,